My name is Chris, and this is the Lancaster Patriot podcast. Well, the Presbyterian Church in America, or the PCA, had what has become somewhat of a big vote, if you will, regarding sex change operations, operations on minors, the transgender butchery that is happening in America. And some of the information that I put out previously was perhaps misleading. In fact, a brother within the PCA reached out to me and said that he had seen some of the information I put out and said that I had misunderstood potentially what happened at the General Assembly. And I want to thank him for doing that. I won't mention his name here because he didn't know I would do this, but I want to thank him for pointing that out and also pointing me to the debate that took place at the General Assembly. Now, there's an overture known as Overture 12, and previously my understanding was that the PCA had voted specifically on this overture as written. And the overture it's a good document. It calls on the civil government to renounce the sin of these transgender, quote-unquote, sex change operations. It's concise, it's well-written, it's to the point. It affirms the biblical doctrine that God created humans, male and female. It even cites Deuteronomy 22:5, which says a woman shall not wear a man's garment, nor shall a man put on a woman's cloak, for whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God. The overture calls medical and social interventions related to so-called sex change procedures a rejection of God's design that will prevent His blessing, grace, and joy to be experienced. It even goes on to look at medical studies, including a ridiculous 900% increase in cases of gender dysphoria among girls over the past 8 years. Then the document calls the civil government leaders in the United States to renounce the sin of all medical and surgical sex change procedures in minors by the American healthcare system because they result in irreversible harm. I would point out that the overture did not contain any petition or request to the civil government regarding what would be just penalties for such butcheries, but be that as it may, the overture is a solid document, and it clearly lifts up Scripture as a standard for right and wrong and calls on civil government leaders to stop the madness of the trans butchery. Now, my understanding previously, and again, I thank this brother in the PCA for challenging me on this, my understanding previously was that the PCA voted specifically on this overture as written and voted on whether or not they approved this being issued from the PCA. Now, it appears that it's much more complicated than that, and perhaps I should have expected that. Again, me not being in the PCA, not a fan of all these procedural mechanisms and movements and motions and thousands of churches. Again, if you keep the churches independent, you don't have to worry about this stuff. But be that as it may, I misunderstood some things potentially. In fact, many of the delegates there, I was able to watch the debate on this after the fact, again, thanks to the brother who pointed this out to me. And even they were it was challenging. There was confusion. What's the exact proper way to move forward with this? So there was, I don't know if it's significant debate compared to other issues in the PCA. I'm not an expert on that, but certainly there were some questions about how to move forward with this. And in the end, what I was told by someone in the PCA is that many voted, or at least some voted against the measure, not because they disagreed with Overture 12, not because they thought that the church should not petition the government. In fact, some of these men said that it should be done, but they voted against what was put forth, which was actually a recommendation for the moderator in the PCA to appoint a commission to come up with a similar statement. Perhaps the same statement, perhaps slightly modified. But some men apparently voted no, not because they didn't like this statement. In fact, probably maybe because they did, but they did not want this to be given over to a commission. And so I want to play a clip here from one of the teaching elders speaking on the floor during the debate over the recommendation regarding Overture 12. I'm not sure if that's the proper way to say it, but I want to play this because I don't want people to get the impression that perhaps I gave that all those who voted no in the PCA against this measure related to Overture 12 did so because they did not think the church should be calling on the civil government to renounce the sin of transgender butchery. It seems like some did. And so I want to set the record straight. I don't want to be dishonest or misleading regarding my brothers in the PCA. Now, I will say, though, that watching this floor debate, I won't play the full thing, but there were still some men, or at least one, who said that this should not be the role of the PCA to be calling out the government regarding these things. And that I would, of course, disagree with strongly. But again, that doesn't seem to be certainly at least the only reason that the measure that was presented or understood by many to be simply should the PCA call on the civil government to renounce this sin, that was not rejected by nearly over 40% actually, simply because they disagree with it. There were some variance within those voting no. And so let me play this clip. This is from Sean Lucas, one of the teaching elders within the PCA. And he's speaking out why he voted against the measure related to Overture 12. So take a listen to this.
Mr. Moderator, teacher and elder Sean Lucas, Covenant Presbytery. I rise to speak against the committee's recommendation, not because I disagree with the fact that this is a case extraordinary. I do believe that the church has the right and ability to speak to a range of issues that touch on the ethical duties that Christians face in the world. And certainly the issue of sex change operations and the things that are going on in our culture would fall into such a case extraordinary. Nor do I disagree with the original overture from Evangel Presbytery. I think the fathers and brothers in that presbytery thought well and gave the Overtures Committee something to work with that might have been presented to the Assembly for us to adopt. I rise to speak against the committee's recommendation because they're asking us to assign this matter to a commission. We have just spent this assembly debating whether our agencies and committees, through their elected boards, can actually affect policy changes. But now we're going to assign a challenging ethical question to a small body of men to speak on behalf of the assembly. Brothers, I would urge us not to do this. I would urge us to defeat this recommendation and allow the presbyteries to bring something to next year's assembly where we might speak collectively as the assembly to a pressing case extraordinary. Vote against the committee's recommendation for the broader principles of Presbyterianism that we have claimed to have embraced at our assembly this year. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, sir.
So that was Sean Lucas, one of the teaching elders within the denomination, explaining why he was against the measure and voted no. And so that's what I want to set straight here, that there was more nuance to this. And again, perhaps as should be expected from a denomination with lots of bylaws and laws and motions and petitions and all these things. And it's not as simple, perhaps, as it had been presented by others and even by me. And so I want to set the record straight on that. Again, the brother who reached out to me, who is an elder within the PCA, said that he was in favor of the original Overture 12, which you can find linked on the Lancaster Patriot on the story about this. And again, great overture. He said he was in favor of that original overture, but he voted against this measure, or however the correct term for this is, in fact, hoping to return to the original overture. But he even said that he was confident that even though he voted against it and this measure passed, he's confident that the commission will draft a good petition that he will likely support. So again, in the end, hopefully the numbers that are in favor of petitioning the civil government to stop this madness will be far greater than the 60-40 split that we saw regarding this overture. And though there still will likely be some, based on some of the floor debate that there will be some that reject any petition to the civil government regarding transgenderism. One of the arguments made was, well, this doesn't specifically relate to the church's function, so therefore we shouldn't be petitioning the government regarding this. Now, I don't know what percentage of the 40% were from that perspective, and what percentage were from the perspective of Sean Lucas and the brother who reached out to me, who was an elder in the PCA, and said that he voted against it because he didn't want it to go to a committee. He wanted it. He actually preferred the original overture. So that's a little more details about what's going on in the PCA. I hope that is clearer than information that was previously put out. Again, these are good debates to be had. These are things the church should be thinking about. What is the role of the church in being a prophetic voice to the civil government, calling on them to obey the Lord Jesus Christ in all things? So we will be watching this closely and see what happens next. Again, there's a lot of procedural things that even the moderator at times had to get clarification on regarding this. So I don't know exactly, once this commission comes forward with their petition, if there has to be another vote or if this is it. My initial thought is that since they voted on it, now they can put forward this petition without another vote, but I could be wrong on that, and I'll have to get clarification on that. But again, Overture 12, a great document from a church within the PCA calling on the civil government to renounce the sin of all medical and surgical sex change procedures in minors by the American healthcare system because they result in irreversible harm. Great document. This document does not appear to be at the moment what is being put forward. There should be another petition coming forward, and we can hope that most within the PCA will indeed support the decision to call on the civil government to stop the madness of trans butchery. So we can hope the PCA will continue to move in the right direction regarding this. Hopefully this is helpful and it presents things in a clearer light that we don't want to, I certainly don't want to misrepresent what is happening in the PCA. I think there are still some things to be concerned about, perhaps, but certainly there's a side of this that I didn't present well previously, and I want to make sure I do that. So thanks for listening. For more information about the Lancaster Patriot, go to thelancasterpatriot.com. So long.